introduction. You know, the different generations in this room right now, and everyone has different experiences and connections to the Holocaust. I think almost everyone has a connection. And as we all know, the impact of the Holocaust on the next generations is quite amazing. It's almost hard to understand how far down it goes. It's second, third, fourth generations, how many people carry, even people that don't even have parents that were in the Holocaust, people that had grandparents or great-grandparents, and it still continues. And I would like to tell my students that I remember when my wife and myself, I think I maybe told this story once, when we got married. My wife is from England, I was born here, my parents are American, and we got married and we went to buy our appliances. So we didn't talk about it. It wasn't a discussion. It was not. But when we came to the store to buy the appliances, we automatically both said we are not interested in anything made in Germany. And we looked at each other, and it was funny because we never discussed it. We came from different countries, different homes, different backgrounds, but we were all brought up in a generation where that was obvious that you didn't buy German products, which, by the way, today has changed drastically.
Yeah.
I don't know what day it was that it was changed, but we realized ourselves that our last stove that we bought was German made, and again we didn't discuss it. So, sorry?
Don't buy French or something like that.
Yeah, it changes. If we had a list who we can't buy from, we would have stone ovens. But the thing is that it sometimes I ask myself, what changed? It wasn't a decision. It wasn't a cold decision that we discussed or thought about it. And the irony, and this is the biggest irony, who is Israel's best friend today? In Europe, it is like if someone would tell someone, in Auschwitz, 1944, that in your grandchildren's lifetime, Israel will be selling missiles to Germany. And Germany will be giving nuclear submarines, selling to Israel. They would think your mom is crazy. So the truth is that it's very hard to put your. It's not a rational thing when we're talking about our relationships and connection to a place like Germany. So that's a little bit nowadays, and I want to go back a little bit to 1952. 1952. If you think that we had big demonstrations the past few years, so 1952, people who don't remember, was as bad, if not worse, and it was the closest thing that Israel ever had to a coup. Menachem Begin marched into the Knesset. They didn't just stop; they marched into the Knesset. They took over the Knesset. It was a mamash, and this was, of course, all about whether or not Israel should be taking money, reparations from Germany after the Shoah. The West German government agreed to pay Israel, to give over to Israel a lot of money. The calculation, by the way, was for refugees from German refugees that made it to Israel. Meaning it wasn't a payout for the Holocaust. It was payout for specific German refugees. They calculated it per how many were there, per a certain amount of money, and that was it. We're talking about a lot of money. Now we know in the 1950s Israel was a very, very poor country. It really was. I told this joke once before that the famous joke is about how poor they were. That when Ben Gurion had his meeting with his cabinet and he asked for suggestions how to survive. So one minister advised him to attack America. Remember that story? They said, "Well, you nuts?" He said, "Yeah, but look at Germany. Germany attacked America, and America destroyed Germany, and then they built this beautiful new West Germany. So we'll do the same. We'll attack America. They'll blow us. They'll destroy us, and then they'll build us a new, brand new Israel." And Ben Gurion's famous answer was, "That's a great idea, but what happens if we win?" Ben Gurion's answer. Right. So Israel was very, very poor country. There was a tzena there. The people. I mean, I wasn't alive then, but people maybe here know more about it than I do. Lived through this maybe perhaps times where there was really no food, and there was no. They gave out food stamps, and it wasn't easy. And Baruch Hashem, we had huge kibbutz galuyot. Jews come from all over the world, speaking many, many, many languages, but really no infrastructures and the economy was very bad. And there was no question that the money from Germany, we look back and we understand today that it made a huge difference. Perhaps even one could argue that without that money, who knows what would have been. I'll mention that Rabbi Soloveitchik, who at the time, it's in the source number 6, you'll see that Rabbi Soloveitchik, who was very adamant, very much opposed taking the money. By the way, the research that I did, the rabbinical world was adamant against taking the money. I read a testimony that all the famous rabbis in America, on the more right side, like Rabbi Kamenetsky and from Lakewood, Rabbi Cutler, they were all very much opposed. But the Rav Soloveitchik really came out against it. I have I'm very friendly with a person, maybe people know him, Rabbi Dr. Nechemia Kleinman. He's now living with Beit Tovei here. He's a survivor, and when I once asked him, he lived in NYU, and he came as a kid from the camps to America, and he went to NYU, and he told me that he asked Rabbi Soloveitchik personally whether or not he should take money. He was offered money. And the Rav said to him that he's against it, but if he said the money's in the bank, you might as well use it. But the Rav was really against it. However, as in source number 6 you can see, many years later there is testimony that Rabbi Soloveitchik chazar bo and said that he really realized that if he would have known today what we didn't know then, how important it was, that money for the state of Israel, then perhaps he would have agreed. However, at the time, in the 1950s, Menachem Begin came back to politics because of this. He was out of politics for a little bit. He came back, and he led a very strong movement against the government, against Ben Gurion. There were marches, there were banners, and you can see here in source number 1. I'm not going to read it, but you'll see just a piece of Menachem Begin's speech using Amalek. The idea of not benefiting from Amalek, not having any hana from Amalek. Surely he used this against the religious politicians, the religious community, using these phrases to try to convince them that they should vote against it. Well, it passed by one vote or something like that, and as the rest is history. However, I would like to really ask: is there any Jewish or halachic sources that can give us any kind of indication, kind of idea of what the Torah, as if, would have said in such a case? So obviously, it's not a clear-cut question or answer, but I think that if we would try to ask the opinion of Torah, we might find some very interesting ideas. And the first source, as we know, I'm sure there's some legal people around here, some lawyers around here. Right, when we have a question and we don't know, we don't have an answer, so we look for precedents. So let's start with a precedent. Where do we have a precedent of this question?
From your book, I read it.
Oh. Yefé meod. It's a history.
I read your book.
History is repeating itself. Mamash repeating itself. That the idea of Am Yisrael leaving Egypt, leaving Berechush Gadol, is not a small matter. It's not mentioned once. It's not mentioned twice. It's not mentioned 3 times. It's mentioned many, many times. In fact, it's mentioned so many times that it begs the question: why is it so important for the Torah, for the Baruch Hu, to make sure that Am Yisrael leave Berechush Gadol? Already in Brit Ben Abitarim, when Avram is told that one day his children will be slaves in Egypt, at the same time then already he is told, but don't worry, they will leave Berechush Gadol. And later on it goes on again. So many times it mentions this that we know that there were Jewish commentators in different times of Jewish history that were very disturbed by this because it sounds very greedy, right? Oh, all we care about is that we take the gold and silver of Egypt, and there were different commentators throughout Jewish history that were almost apologetic to try to explain this idea? Why is it so important? Why does Baruch Hu make sure that we come out Rechush Gadol? Now, before we continue, I want to say I just recently saw some amazing idea, which is totally off topic, but I think it's just we mentioned it on Shvisha Pesach last week. I think it's an amazing idea. I just said that it's mentioned so many times, and that I said it's also mentioned in the beginning, in the days of Avram, meaning as if HaKadosh Baruch Hu had a plan to install this idea in people's mind hundreds of years before. Everyone should know that when Jews leave Egypt, they'll be leaving with a lot of money. Why? So I read somewhere, I don't remember who said this, that it was tactics, war tactics. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we know, could have snapped his fingers and take us out of Egypt. Well, he didn't want to do that. He had a whole educational program of educating the Jews and educating Mitzrayim, showing the world his great miracles. Why did the Egyptians run after Bnei Israel when they left Egypt? Why did they come to Yam Suf? The greatest miracle we know is Yam Suf. Why did Yam Suf happen? They left Egypt. Let them go. They already said we're going to let you go. Why did Paro and his people run after the Egyptians? That's very simple. Because they took all the gold and silver. Meaning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu planted this idea way before, so that the Egyptians should want to run after the Jews, Bnei Israel, into the Yam Suf, because they were so upset about their gold and silver that was taken. So it was basically a means to get the Mitzrayim to run after the Jews. It's all a war strategy. I think that's a brilliant idea. You can argue with it if you want or not. I just think it's a very original idea. Yes?
Wasn't it also that they suddenly realized that they had nobody to do any work?
I mean, it could be. That might be, right? I don't know. I'm just saying, you can argue. I'm not saying this is the best shot. I think it's a brilliant idea. You can accept it or not, yeah.
Doesn't Pshat say why they said Shilachnu is that they wanted them back to the other
Well, Chazal also mentioned the idea of the gold and silver that they were worried about. It also is mentioned, by the way. However, going back to other Pirushim, I think this is an amazing, by the way, exercise in Parshanut, historical Parshanut. I'm a big believer in when you see Parshanut, that's a little bit more than just explaining the psukim, but rather giving some more larger idea. It's all about context when it is said. I'll give you a good example. When Yaakov bows down to Esav, so some people rip him up for it. How dare Yaakov embarrass himself? And because of that, Chazal said the Jews were punished later on. And then some midrashim say, "Wow, it's what a good midah is of Yaakov to be humble in front of Esav." Right? It's different historical, perhaps context. It's different perspectives of that reflect certain events in Jewish history. There's a time to bow down. There's a time to be strong. I'll give you an example also that I find fascinating. Just another example before we go into our example. Why do we take the wine? Right? Why do we pour the wine from the cup on night of Seder with our little fingers? Why do we take that wine? What's the reason that you all have brought up with?
The Egyptians died, so
to celebrate the demise of the...
Because you have to remember that with all the victory of Mitzrayim, the Egyptians died, right? Right? We I think participate in their pain, or something like that, right? Right? Do you know, Meir Soloveitchik just put out a whole article saying it's exactly the opposite. He has sources that show that it actually shows that we're putting a drop against every enemy that should be destroyed like the Egyptians, right? Exactly the opposite. Right? Meaning, it's very interesting. I'm not saying who's right and wrong right now, but it could very well be that during this year, I felt the night of the Seder. I said I don't feel this is what I want to do right now. I don't want to feel right now. I don't feel this year so much that I have to show solidarity or with my enemies right now. Maybe when things are a little bit more calm, I can think about it. But not this year. And so I mean, Parshanut has context. And I think that when you see Parshanim, the Farshim, write certain things, you have to remember what their background was, where they're coming from. You can't judge an opinion without understanding the background, where it's written, how it's written, right? When Rashi says some very radical things, you have to remember Rashi witnessed the Crusades, and he's reflecting on the Crusades. He's not living, and then with other Rishonim who were living in a very good life in Spain, didn't want to rock the boat. They'll say other things. So there's no question that commentaries of Psukim is a lot of times the reflections of the times and historical events that we're going through. And the same goes for the different attitudes that exist in Chumash, on the Chumash about why did the Jews take the gold and silver. Some people say, what do you mean? Why? We deserve every shekel. We have to apologize? The Egyptians, if they would give back what they really owe us for hundreds of years of slavery, they would go bankrupt. We have to feel bad. We have to apologize. Now, by the way, this is reflected in the Gemara. There's a Gemara. I didn't bring this Gemara here. There's a Gemara, though, that tells us... Oh, wait, maybe I did. 1 second. No. There's a Gemara that says that there was an Egyptian who came over to the hundreds of years ago, time of the Gemara, who came over to one of the leaders of the world and said, we'll take the Bible on face value. Fine, let's read the Bible together. In the Bible, it says that the Jews, Bnei Israel, left Egypt with all the gold and silver in Egypt. Pay us back.
It was quite around Alexander.
I think it was Alexander, yeah. And he said, fine, you're right, let's call the Jews. And they called the Jews, and basically what they answered is exactly that. They said, fine, no problem. We'll pay you back after you recalculate 600,000 men, besides women and children, times 210 years. What was the GPA, I don't know, at the time, and how much life expectancy was, and how much people make money, and we'll do the calculation. And let's see at the end who will come out better. Who owes whom? Now, by the way, this story came out in the 20th century again. There was an Egyptian reporter who obviously didn't know the Gemara, but did the same exact thing. He thought he was a genius, that he suddenly figured this out himself, and he wrote about this in an article in the paper, in the Egyptian paper. We should demand from the state of Israel all the gold and silver that they stole from us thousands of years ago. So. By the way, I know it sounds very political. I don't want to, but it does very sound much about the famous argument we'll make about reparations today, with Palestinians versus Jews coming from. I'm sure you've heard this argument. The same exact thing. People say, fine, we'll pay reparations for the Palestinians who were thrown out of their homes as soon as Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Tunisia, Algeria. Did I forget anyone? Libya pay back all what they took from when the Jews left their country. So it's a very similar kind of idea going on here. As I said, Ein Chadash Tachat Hashamesh here in this idea. However, there were those who actually argued that that Akadosh Baruch Hu wanted us not to hate the Egyptians so much. You ever heard that idea? That when we left Egypt, we left with a lot of myrrh. And the Torah, by the way, reflects this in a way where the Torah suggests two different attitudes towards the Mitzri. Lo teta'ev et ha-Mitzri ki, right? The Egyptian, how many generations do we have to wait till they can convert? Three. While Ammoni and Moavi, never. Why? Because at the end of the day, they took us in, right? You feel that the Torah itself, and on the other hand, the Torah says you're not allowed to go back to Egypt, but you can't hate the Egypt. I mean, you almost sense that the Torah is laying down some kind of rules that reflect a conflict of emotions that we have towards our people who enslaved us. Again, very similar to Germany, very similar to perhaps Spain, very similar to other events in Jewish history where where we have a mixed kind of feelings of how are we supposed to reflect to those who were so bad to us, so terrible to us. And some Mepharshim really say that's why the Kadosh Baruch Hu told us take the gold and silver, so that when we have the gold and silver in the house, it'll somehow maybe not make it won't make closure, but perhaps it'll do something positive that'll leave people with less of a taste of maror in their mouths. And it's very interesting because when you read that Perush that was written hundreds of years ago, it mamish reflects what we're talking about now. Perhaps. Like I said before, the fact that Germany today, so all the buses in Israel, right? You know that are used to be. I think they maybe changed, but when I was a kid growing up, they were all Mercedes. My Rebbe in high school told us that as a kid he would never drive a bus in Israel because of that. He would never got on a bus because they were all German made. But they were all Mercedeses. They were all Mercedeses. The buses in Israel. Sorry.
The reparations were paid in kind to Israel.
They were paying. They weren't paying.
Kind. In other words, they gave X number of Mercedes. X
Correct. Yeah. Right. It was. Listen. It was. I don't know all the buses, right? But I'm saying that there was for sure. It wasn't just money, right? It wasn't money. It was equipment. It was vehicles. It was infrastructure. Things that came from Germany, and. Again, I think that we have, like we just said, I mean, I said, you disagree with me, but it's a bit of it. Israel was built this way, right? We have to recognize that. It maybe it's very disturbing emotionally, but it's a fact. So it almost goes back to what the Torah said about Egypt. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out. However, I would like to read together with you a commentary in source number 14. You know those big fat chumashim, Rav Pninim? You know what I'm talking about? Very, very fat chumashim. They don't sell them anymore, I think. And they have a lot of different commentaries. So in them, there's a commentary that's called commentary. It doesn't say who wrote it. I have not found who wrote this. But look what he says about this. If you skip a little bit, you can read to yourself. Look at the bottom, the last few lines. Why was this allowed? The deceivement. To remember the 3 days of the Choshech, Chazal say that we borrowed their vessels of gold and silver so we can take it. What's all this game? Why deceiving them? Should a Jew be taught to be deceiving? I said before, there were commentators, especially in the 19th century, who were very disturbed by this. How can it be that by way of deceiving, Kadosh Baruch Hu is teaching us to lie and to cheat and to steal? So this commentary, and I think, I don't know when this was written, I don't know who wrote it, but I'm convinced that it was written in the context of some bad times in the history of the Jewish people. Because look how he says, all this was permissible for Israel to do to these wicked people who had embittered their lives with forced hard labor for no reason and had drowned their children in the river. Like, guys, stop with the sympathy. Stop being such a holy person. We are talking about murderers. We are talking people who just killed our children, who threw them in the yard, who enslaved us in the most horrific way, made us turn into slaves. You want to show sympathy now? You want to show put things in perspective. These are the enemy. So like I said before, you can see the emotional reaction towards the story of Egypt, and as I said, one can really, it's very easy to compare this story to the reparations of Germany. If you look at source number 13, you see that Ibn Ezra says this is a midah of din. He says it a little bit with less emotion. Ibn Ezra was in Spain, perhaps he wasn't as emotional about this, but he says, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu ensure that Bnei Yisrael would leave Rechush Gadol? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants people to know that He's Dayan Emet, and there is justice in this world, and that the Bnei Yisrael deserve to be paid for their hard work, and that is justice. We don't have to apologize for it. He doesn't say it as emotional as source number 14, but he says, right? So that look in source number 13, you will see that. Yes, Lakasha.
I don't see the parallel between 14 and 13 because in 14 they're making a case for deceiving somebody so that you get your way. We didn't deceive anybody.
No, according to Chazal, in the 3 days of Choshech, the Jews borrowed. Right, it's not Chazal. The Torah says.
It's deceiving, yes.
Correct, it is deceiving.
But I don't see the parallel between that and the reparations, because the reparations we didn't deceive anybody. We were just
No, I agree. But what's also I'll explain. The deceiving was the only way to get the money.
yes.
So he's saying if that was the way to get the money, surely we should have taken the money. Some people would have said that's lying, that's cheating. And he's saying to get that money is something that we deserve. We don't have to apologize for it. If we did it in the way of deceiving, that's fine. Because at the end of the day, we're taking it from the wicked people. I mean, the principle of taking what is mine with permission, without permission, that's the point here. Yes, Vakasha.
It's a little off topic, but when the portion discussed what happened to the 80% of you who did not leave behind,
I mean, all we know that they stayed behind.
that's it.
According to Chazal, l'chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael, that many stayed behind.
So the extreme shouldn't have been concerned about anywhere 80% stayed.
You know, it's a Chazal. I don't know. My guess, by the way, my understanding is different. My understanding is that these Jews, these Bnei Israel that stayed behind, this is my interpretation. You can argue with me. It was less that they were slaves. They were probably integrated, assimilated Jews. My guess is that it wasn't so clear cut as we think it was. Like it wasn't like Nazi Germany that we were Aryan, you know, or Jewish. I think that there were Israelites that probably were more had connections and money, and perhaps they weren't slaves, and perhaps they're the one who stayed behind. That's my guess. There's no reason to think that it was a racial thing at the time. But again, I don't know. That's what I'm guessing. Yeah.
By accepting the reparations, are we absolving the perpetrators?
That is exactly the part of the tension here. That's exactly part of the tension. I think that's exactly. Oh, let's go back now to the argument, right? Let's go back to 1952. Those who argued against said, you know, haratzachta. They said, you know, by taking the money from the murderers, we're going to soften our feelings towards them. We're going to as if forgive them. More important, we're going to show the world that all you have to do is, if you kill Jews, just pay them a bit of money and you'll solve the problem. You'll help them wipe away their guilt. And this will be a lesson to other people. You know, it's not the same, but it's similar. I think I spoke about this once here before. During the Eichmann trial, did you know how many prominent, well-known Jews in the world signed a petition against killing Eichmann?
Wow.
I'll give you a few names.
On the basis of?
Martin Buber, Leah Goldberg, Isaiah Berlin. Why? Now, by the way, these protocols opened up just the archives. The archives were opened up in the past 10 years of the Eichmann trials. A lot of information has come out, including the protocol of the government meeting in which Yosef Board was against. There was a vote in the government what to do if the court would find him not put him to death. Would the government of Israel put him to death? Would they override the court? Why? Now, don't think for 1 second that it was because these people did not have any mercy towards Eichmann. The reason was an educational one. They were concerned that if we were to, which we did, if we put Eichmann to death, then the Germans would say, wash their hands off the Holocaust. That's it, we solved the Holocaust. We found the person. We found the guy who did it. It was Eichmann. See? You guys got your revenge. You got your answers. Now let's move forward. They were so concerned that the magnitude of the Holocaust would be suddenly narrowed down to one person. I mean, if you think about it, it's crazy that the only person that we really put on trial, like seriously, is one person, right? I mean, Nuremberg trials, they put a few Nazis up to trial. They hanged, I think, 10, right? They hanged 10 of them. They hanged 10 because it was a famous thing about because of Haman's and his sons.
There were trials all over Europe.
Yeah, but I think they only killed 10.
But Israel at the time did not have capital punishment.
Well, they did. They passed the law
They didn't have capital other than for Eichmann.
for Nazis. Right? They passed the
They did
law.
not have capital.
They still don't. They still don't. Right? But they did. They do have a law. They do have a law. By the way, they were thinking of recently using that law for the Hamas people. They were thinking of applying that law because Israel doesn't have a capital punishment. The army does. The army is allowed to execute people. The army is allowed to. It was used once in the history of Israel. It's a very bad story. I'm going to do it right now. Yes.
I was going to say, the most amazing thing I've heard the last week, 2 weeks, is Germany has invited Israeli police to come to Germany to train the German police.
That's very smart.
I'm not sure exactly. That's very smart of theirs.
It shows you how crazy the world is.
Yeah, it is a crazy world. That's for sure.
Wow.
All right. Yeah. Okay. These were the arguments. The argument, of course, against was we need money. So as I said, one study case would be Mitzrayim and the Rechush Gadol. But there are other sources that I would like to use. Again, it's not a source that I can put my finger on and say, oh, we have an answer. But maybe other sources that perhaps can give us some kind of direction. In the 1960s, I think, Rabbi Yoshev, big Talmud Chacham, Rabbi Yoshev, was asked a shaila. The German something in Germany, they had some kind of Karen, some kind of organization that was giving money towards great German people, and some Jewish community, used this idea to put out a book of Rishonei Ashkenaz, and they were given money from the German, I'm not sure if the government even, but like money to publish Rishonim, German Rishonim from Ashkenaz. And the question was, can you take money from the Germans? So it's not reparations exactly, but it's really taking money from Germans. Is that something allowed? And Rabbi Yoshev actually turned his the tshuva towards a Gemara. That's a fascinating piece of Gemara that I don't know if we would have thought about it if not for this. The Gemara says that it's usher to take tzedakah from a goy. There's actually 2 sugiyot that prohibit receiving money from goyim. Jews are not allowed to take tzedakah from goyim. Oh, you're looking at me like that? Sorry?
I was saying that as I recall it, but is it to you privately?
So there are a few. Don't worry. We're Allah says that you can't loan interest, and we somehow play a little bit with it. But there is such a rule. There's such a law that you're not allowed to take money from tzedakah from a goyin. I want to direct your attention to this. If you look at source number 3 and source number 2, look at source number 2. It's a story of a woman called Ifra Hurmuz. She should change her name. What can I say? The mother of King Shapur, king of Persia. The Persians, they don't leave us alone, do they? He sent 400 dinars to Rabbi Ami, but he did not accept them. She then sent them to Rava, and he accepted them for the sake of peace, of what we call Shlom Malchut. Right? Shlom Malchut, he accepted them. Rabbi Ami heard what Rav had done. He was angry. He said, how does Rava not accept the lesson of the verse, Pasuk in Yeshayahu? The pasuk says it's a mashal. The pasuk says that when the wheat is very, very dry, so a wind that comes will snap it. But when the wheat is kind of soft, so any wind will just bend it. It won't snap it. And the mashal, the nimshal of this mashal of Yeshayahu, is that the goyim who enslave the Jewish people, when they have merit, when they have zchuyot, so they will bend with the wind. But if they're dry of merit, dry of zchuyot, any wind will snap them. In other words, Rava was saying,
If the goyim,
the
goyim have merit or no merit.
Correct.
Okay.
So by accepting, listen to this, the Gemara is saying by accepting tzedakah from a guy, you're helping him get sachar b'shamayim. And that works against us. Now, I want to explain something that people, I think, miss in this Gemara. Sounds a bit strange, right? Sounds a bit strange. People are making like faces right now. I mean, you can't see because you're sitting in one, but I'm seeing everyone's faces right now. Right? So let's understand again context. Who is the woman here who is sending this? Ifra Hermes, mother of King Shapur, king of Persia. The Mefarshim argue who this was, what historical event this was talking about. It's not hard to understand what her intentions are. Right? We know there's no free dinner. There's no free lunch. I don't know what you say. Free lunch or free dinner? What do you say? No free lunch. Why is she giving the Jews money? It's an empire. There's an interest. It's not just a kind of sachar ve'onesh b'shamayim thing, but rather perhaps continuing her koach over the Jewish people. We know, and this, by the way, is a fascinating jump to nowadays, to a question which I don't want to go into, but it does have some similar ideas, which is taking money from America, taking money from England, taking money from France. I'm not here to say that we should take money, but we all know that the price that we pay for it. It's a bracha with a curse. We all know it. If we were strong enough to be totally independent, we wouldn't have. We can go into Rafiach when we want to. We can do what personal exchange that we want to. The fact that we are so dependent upon America, and America has done amazing things and give us a lot of support and help, and we have to Mekir Tova, and I'm not. But it's also there's also a curse in it, right? That we're dependent upon, and we can't decide. We're not truly independent in our decisions. And this might be what the Gemara is hinting towards too. In there's an article that a certain rabbi wrote that was published a few years ago about whether or not you're allowed to take money from America, halachically, and he discusses this question regarding this Gemara. At the end of the day, the Gemara says that even Rava, who took the money, who is this? Rav Ami. Rava, who took the money, used the money to non-Jews. Meaning he wouldn't give them to Jews. He accepted the money, but he said Jews cannot benefit from this money. By the way, again, this is not our topic, but you should know this is a huge question nowadays with Christians who are pouring millions into Israel. They're even pouring millions into yeshuvim, to yeshivot. You go to the Shomron and you see like this, a park that was made, some Texas church. In the beginning of the war, because of Jeremy and we were in touch with through your wife, right? To this Texas church, right? You know what I'm talking about? I went, yeah. She got a phone call from someone in Texas that had
Texas Cowboys.
Who were giving. No, this is a church. Mamash a church that wanted to give money to buy Chayalei Tzahal vests. So on one hand you say, wow, that's amazing. This is Achrit Hayamim. Mitzad Sheni, the Gemara is not so crazy about this. Not only that, there's another Gemara which is even more important in this context. In source number 3, the Gemara here suggests a different problem why one should not take money from a non-Jew. The money says it's a Chilul Hashem. The Gemara says if a Jew receives money from a non-Jew, he's puzzled for Edut. Why? Why is he puzzled for Edut? Because look how low he'll go, this person, for money. If he's willing to accept money from any source, it shows how money is important for him. He might be bribed also to be a false witness. False witness. Meaning, the Gemara says to accept money from a goy is chil Hashem. Now, the Mefarshim argue, why is it chil Hashem? Why is it chil Hashem? So one could say because the fact that the goyim are now, we're giving them that kind of feeling that they're above us and they're giving us money and they're powerful and the Jew is like a nebuch and everything else. That itself is a chil Hashem situation. But some people say it's a chil Hashem because it reflects badly on the Jewish community who couldn't support their own. And that this Jew couldn't get money from the Jewish community, that he had to go beg from the goyim.
Is this current?
This is a piece of Talmud. This is a source of Talmud from 2,000 years ago.
In converse, I've always enjoyed giving donations.
2,000 years.
Yeah. So this is the Talmud, right? Since the Talmud, there's a lot of different. As someone mentioned, it could very well be that in situations where we couldn't. Look in the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, the Shulchan Aruch. So, wait. Is in source number 4. He says, "Asul yisrael lekabel tzedakah min agum l'saresia." Because of this, in public, it's not allowed. But if there's not enough charity in the Jewish community, then it's permitted. Meaning, you talk about shlom achut. It could very well be that there's a difference between a government, like the Gemara before was about government giving money, and this is more maybe perhaps an individual giving an individual. Might be different, might be easier. Less of a chilul Hashem if it's in public or b'tzina. So there are different ways. The Mefarshim, by the way, it's a Shulchan Aruch. The Mefarshim talk about this. There's certain conditions that perhaps it would be permitted. I'm not going to go into all the ins and outs right now, but I wanted to make you aware of this principle, that there is such a principle in halakha that says, we have our dignity, and just to say, who cares where money comes? But we all know that we care where money comes from. We're going to take any money from where it comes from. There was a very famous institution that received a huge donation from a very well-known arms dealer. And there were big questions that came up, ethical questions. Should a serious institution take money from people who make money from selling guns? Right? We all know that these are very ethical questions, where the money comes from, and I think that's what the Gemara is talking about too. We don't say just, oh yeah, take money, it's money, go ahead. Going back to Germany, right? Meaning. Rabbi Katz, I'll give you a second. Rabbi Reuben Katz, I don't know if you've heard of him. He wasn't well known today, but at the time he was very well known. He was the chief rabbi of Petach Tikva, right? In source number 8, to my knowledge, he is one of the only people that actually wrote an entire piece of paper regarding this question.
The one who was supposed to be the boom catcher, and he became the chief rabbi, and then he got cut. I don't know that story. Apparently, it was the Bitan Chacham, and he, to my knowledge, I found 2 articles written reflecting on this question as halachic works. I found quotes, but I only found 2 people who wrote an entire article, an entire opinion, whether or not, according to Jewish law and Jewish tradition, should we take money from the Germans. So Rabbi Reuben Katz was one of them, who wrote a whole piece of that. He was very much against, and he brought many reasons why we should not receive the money. One of them is what we said now. He said it's totally unethical. Where's this money coming from? This money has blood in it. It's blood money. He said we're not just taking money. We're taking equipment. We're taking technology. Where was this technology?
It comes from America. Okay, after the war. Okay, so was a Marshall Plan. So that was American money.
Okay, but when Germany was giving us some technology, they were giving us. We said Mercedeses. They were giving us German-made equipment. His argument was some of this equipment was used in the Holocaust to kill Jews. Look, you can read the article. He's talking about some. We know the people who. Come on, we know Siemens ovens today. It's not a secret. AIG, whatever. Whatever. These companies go back to companies that during the war were involved in making the camps, involved in giving technology to make the gas chambers. So he's saying, but this is a famous question about medical ethic question regarding experiments that were made in the Holocaust on victims, on Jews, on prisoners. Is it ethical to use that medical data nowadays, right? Experiments that were made on people. So in a similar question, should Israel right now should Germany build a factory in Israel that part of the technology was used in Auschwitz? I mean, I'm saying it very extreme. I don't know exactly what I'm saying right now. I'm just throwing you something, right? But that was where is the money coming from? Do we say Kol Emtzeim Ksherim? It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference as long as we survive, or is it something unethical for us to take this money? And that, I think, is what the Gemara is also reflecting here. Yes.
Could it also be stolen?
Okay. I mean, Jewish money going back. I don't know, but right? Yes.
Okay, but even this Gemara in Sanhedrin, it doesn't like the principle that the beginning of the Gemara articulates, because it comes back and it gives all kinds of. It says a statement with regard to taking charity from public versus private. In other words, it's pushing back. The Gemara itself is pushing back on its own statement. So, and I think we see this in many examples like this within Chazal, where they say, okay, this is the value, this is the principle. However,
I agree.
However, there's a lot of problems with sticking to that.
That's why I said from the beginning, I don't have any source. I have no sources that I can say it's clear to me what the answer should be. I'm just trying to show that this is not a new question. Ein chadash tachat hashamish. Look, and source number 7, by the way, that's the source I wanted to tell you. This guy, Rabbi From, he was a Rebbe in Merkaz Harav. He wrote an article using these sources to discuss whether or not in the 60s and the 70s, how much should Israel be dependent upon America for money and for aid. And he uses this Gemara, and he says, listen, it's not tzedakah, right? Aid is not tzedakah because people have interests. America has interests, we have interests, so don't look at it as tzedakah. And he says it's very different than if it's a government giving a government rather than individuals giving individuals. Again, these questions come up again and again, but I want to end.
He was the son of Rav Kook.
Was he?
Yeah,
From? He was a Rebbe in America, yeah. Okay. He's very firm.
He died young.
Yeah. There's a lot more to talk about this, and I hope that you have the source. I just want to end with one thing. There's a legend, an urban legend, that there was a decree that Jews cannot live in Spain. Urban legend. That there was a decree that Jews cannot go back to live in Spain, that after the expulsion of Spain, there's a decree. Now, it's a fascinating question because so many different Rabbanim in different times said, I heard about this legend, I heard about this decree, but I've never yet to find a real source that backs it up. Rav Kook has a whole article about this. The best, by the way, if you Google it, Mark Shapiro. If you know who he is, wrote an excellent article saying, I checked it all, there is no such decree. There is a legend, by the way. Anyone English here? Any English people? Are you English? Right? There's a urban legend about York. Again, I have searched for a source for this. I have not found. If you know something about this, so again.
And I'm visiting Spain. We didn't visit Spain.
So I said I think it's an urban legend about York. I have not found any source that backs it up. By the way, if I'm not mistaken, the Cherem of York was not to be overnight in York. I think you're allowed to visit in the daytime, but you can't sleep overnight. Jews can't sleep at night in York. I think the Cherem should be continued to New York too, but okay. Oh, did he? Really? Do you know anything? Do you have anything written about this? I wonder. Because I wonder if he released it because he knew there was something real about it. I mamish would love to know. If there's something, I've looked, I've searched, I have not found anything.
We went on a school walking tour, and we went to York, and we were told we have to be out before nightfall.
Right, there you go. Now, these two decrees, whether or not they're true or not, obviously stem from the original decree that you're not allowed to go back to Egypt. The idea,
So how did the
the
Rambam
Torah
go about
said,
it?
so this is not my shir. I'm happy to come back and give another shir about whether or not you're allowed to leave Egypt today. It's a whole shir of itself. But in 1945, when the Holocaust was over, there was a rabbinical council of Europe rabbis, whatever there was, that came together, and on the table was a suggestion to make a cherem that Jews should never step foot in Germany again. It was such a cherem. And the Kol Mevasser, very famous posek at the time, got up and said, "Are you nuts?" He said, "The Torah said you can't go to Egypt, and the Rambam lived in Egypt, and we were trying to explain every day how he did that. So you want to make up new decrees that we know we're not going to be able to stand up to, so we have to explain why we overcame them later on." Not very smart thing to do, and they didn't do it. But I think that the fact that they were talking about it reflects, as I said before, as I began to share today, a lot of mixed emotions and feelings that we have towards our enemies. And the question really is, should we live these emotions? How long can we? It's a scary thought. But look at us today. Does anyone here really feel anything against the Spaniards, except the fact that they're anti-Semitic? They always were, but I'm sorry. As time goes by, right, it's very natural, very normal for people to forget and to accept, and new generations. And I'm not right. You say why are they to blame for their great grandparents? I'm not going to discussion right now. All I'm saying is that we don't have today the same mita'an towards Spain as we do today towards Germany, and I assure you that our great grandchildren will not have the same emotions that you have towards the Germans. And it's a very good question. When we make a Yom HaShoah next week, and we educate and we remind ourselves, we are going through a lot of transitions where there's emotions, are conflicting other feelings that we have, and it's not a simple thing. I just wanted to make people aware that this is an ongoing thing. From Egypt through Spain to Germany, it's an ongoing issue that we Jews have of how we remember and live with that memory in a way that we can actually live with it and not just Thank you very much. I'm sorry I was late today. I apologize again. I'm actually supposed to go to the airport soon. I'm going for a simcha, so